Somewhere in the world, right now, a patient is being kept alive by a machine that should have been destroyed years ago. It was decommissioned by a hospital in Western Europe, collected by a broker, loaded onto a shipping container, shipped across 2 continents, and sold to a clinic that had no idea what it was buying. The machine works, most of the time, but its filters have not been replaced in years. Its calibration has drifted, and the safety cutoffs that would have warned a Western hospital that something was wrong have been disabled to keep it operational. This is a trade worth billions of dollars a year. It operates in plain sight, through legitimate-looking companies with real documentation and real invoices, and the WHO estimates that 1 in 10 medical products in low and middle income countries is either substandard or outright falsified. To understand where this begins, you need to understand what happens when a large hospital decides it no longer needs a piece of equipment.
Every major hospital trust in the UK generates a constant stream of surplus equipment. MRI machines replaced by newer models, CT scanners upgraded, ventilators superseded by more advanced units, patient monitors, ultrasound machines, surgical kits.
The NHS alone spends over £7 billion a year on medical equipment. When that equipment is replaced or retired, it has to go somewhere. The formal process is rigorous. The informal process is something else entirely. A legal and legitimate secondary market exists for refurbished medical equipment. It is worth over $10 billion globally and growing. Hospitals in emerging economies genuinely need affordable access to technology. And properly refurbished equipment serviced to standard can save lives. But alongside the legitimate market, something else has grown. A shadow industry that takes the same decommissioned equipment, skips the refurbishment, stamps a forged certification on it, and sells it to a hospital in West Africa or Southeast Asia for a fraction of its supposed value.
The broker is the invisible fulcrum of this entire system. They do not manufacture anything. They do not refurbish anything. They simply acquire decommissioned equipment from one side of the world and move it to the other.
Their stock lists read like the inventory of a fully functioning hospital. Siemens MRI scanners, GE CT machines, Philips patient monitors, all available for immediate dispatch, all priced in a way that should raise immediate alarm. The Netherlands, Germany, and the United Arab Emirates have all been identified as major transit hubs for this grey market equipment. The stock moves through these jurisdictions specifically because customs checks on outbound medical equipment are far less rigorous than on inbound. The CE mark, Europe's safety certification for medical devices, is the key to making this work. A legitimate CE mark means a product has been independently tested and certified to meet European safety standards. A forged one means nothing except that someone with a printer and a knowledge of the format has produced a convincing document. Regulators and independent researchers have documented a significant increase in the use of forged and recycled CE marks on medical equipment entering low and middle income countries. The forged marks are specific, plausible, and designed to survive a cursory document check. They will not survive laboratory analysis, but nobody is running laboratory analysis. Because the hospitals buying this equipment are desperate, and desperation and due diligence are poor companions. For a hospital in this position, the arrival of a second MRI scanner, even at a price that seems suspiciously low, feels like a lifeline. The documentation looks correct. The equipment turns on. The images it produces look, on the surface, acceptable. What she does not know is that the machine producing this image has a magnetic field that has drifted 3% outside tolerance, a drift that is invisible without specialist calibration equipment, a drift that makes tumours appear marginally smaller than they are, or not appear at all.
The misdiagnosis rate for out-of-calibration diagnostic imaging equipment is almost impossible to measure, because there is no systematic tracking of where these machines come from or what condition they are actually in.
But the WHO's estimate that 1 in 10 medical products in developing countries is substandard or falsified is not limited to medicines. It includes devices, and it includes the machines that keep people breathing. The oxygen concentrator and the ventilator are the 2 most dangerous categories in this market. Unlike a malfunctioning MRI scanner which produces inaccurate data, a malfunctioning concentrator or ventilator kills directly and immediately. The COVID-19 pandemic did not create this market, but it amplified it beyond anything previously seen. As the global demand for oxygen concentrators and ventilators surged to catastrophic levels in 2020 and 2021, the supply of legitimate equipment could not keep up.
Governments suspended standard procurement rules. emergency exemptions were granted, and into that gap the grey market flooded. Equipment of unknown provenance, unknown condition, and unknown safety status was purchased at speed by governments who had no time to verify anything.
Post-pandemic audits in multiple countries found that significant portions of emergency medical equipment purchased during peak COVID demand was either non-functional, dangerously substandard, or in one documented case in South Asia, had been fitted with components that posed a direct fire risk.
The paper trail is deliberately impenetrable. Transactions are structured through shell companies in multiple jurisdictions. The original broker receives a commission. The importing agent takes a cut. The government official who signed off on the emergency purchase may or may not have received an additional consideration.
Beyond the forged CE marks, a secondary industry has emerged. Organisations that are not official regulatory bodies, but present themselves with sufficient formality to be convincing. For a fee ranging from $2,000 to $20,000, they will issue a certificate that describes a piece of equipment as having met international safety standards. The certificate is technically not forged. The organisation issuing it is real and it genuinely issued the document, but the organisation has no accreditation, no testing capability, and no authority to make any such determination. It simply sells reassurance.
And because the procurement managers being targeted have neither the resources nor the training to distinguish between a legitimate notified body and a convincing imitation, the certificate does exactly what it was designed to do. When Western inspectors have examined shipments intercepted at ports or flagged after equipment failures, they have consistently found the same pattern: superficially convincing documentation, untraceable supply chains, equipment in conditions that would have failed basic inspection at the origin country's own standard.
The legitimate refurbishment industry, the businesses doing this properly, investing in calibration, certification and safety, are being undercut at every turn. A legitimately refurbished MRI scanner certified to standard might cost $300,000. The grey market equivalent with forged paperwork costs $80,000. A hospital with a tight budget and a waiting list of patients will choose the $80,000 machine every time. The human cost of this market is almost impossible to fully quantify, because the deaths it causes do not appear in any single database. They appear as individual tragedies in individual hospitals in individual countries. A patient who received the wrong diagnosis because the scanner was out of calibration. A premature baby whose oxygen concentrator failed in the night. A surgical patient whose monitoring equipment did not alarm when it should have. Each of these deaths is attributed to medical complexity, to resource constraints, to the inherent uncertainty of medicine in difficult conditions. Almost none are ever traced back to the equipment, and almost none ever result in action against the supply chain that put that equipment in the room.
Duan, the WHO has called for increased international cooperation to combat substandard and falsified medical products. It has published guidance. It has run awareness campaigns. It has urged member states to strengthen their regulatory frameworks. But the cartel, if that is what it is, does not fear reports. It fears enforcement. And enforcement requires resources, jurisdiction, and political will that most affected countries simply do not have.
Because the market has seeped all the way down, from the high-end grey market in MRI scanners to the open-air resale of single-use surgical equipment, syringes, catheters, surgical gloves, items designed to be used once, sterilised and discarded, being cleaned, repackaged and sold again. The expiry date, the element of this story that links the oxygen concentrators to the surgical kits to the ventilators. Because the other major product in this supply chain is not equipment at all, it is time.
Relabeling expired medical consumables, changing the expiry date on surgical equipment, on diagnostic kits, on sterile packaging, is one of the oldest frauds in the medical supply chain. It requires nothing more than a label printer and a stock of products that would otherwise have to be destroyed.
The full scale of this market has never been accurately measured, because by its nature it operates beyond the reach of formal data, but estimates from international health bodies, customs agencies and academic researchers put the annual value of the substandard and falsified medical device trade at somewhere between $4 and $11 billion a year.
It is a market built on the desperation of healthcare systems that cannot afford the real thing, the negligence of oversight bodies that cannot monitor everything, and the cynicism of intermediaries who have decided that the distance between a warehouse in Rotterdam and a hospital in Kampala is sufficient moral insulation.
The patient does not know this. The doctor does not know this. The clinic manager who purchased the equipment and verified the documentation does not know this. In the supply chain of falsified medical equipment, ignorance is not a consequence, it is a business model. I am off the books.